2025. What a year. I have had a variety of adventures, locations, subjects ranging from landscape to street photography to wildlife photography, even aviation photography. It has been a mixed bag of photography this year. So a few days ago, I put out a poll on my social media asking if people would be interested in how I edit my images. Everybody sees the locations and the adventures I've been on, and then they see the final image. But what they don't see is the bit in between, the bit where I sit in front of this computer for hours upon days, putting the final touches to each image that you have seen. So I thought this week, for the final video of 2025, I would show you how I edit my images. Now, I'm going to pick 3 images, a landscape, a street, and a wildlife, and just talk you through how my workflow works. Now, this isn't going to be a huge, in-depth how I edit. This is more aimed at the newbie photographer, the newbie to editing on this software, which, by the way, is Lightroom. So if you're expecting a huge, in-depth how I edit image, this is not for you. But stick around anyway. You know, you might, well, you won't, pick up some hints and tips that you may not know. You won't. But like I say, it's more aimed at the new photographer if you're just getting into it or you're new to it. So without further ado, let's get onto the screen, and I will talk you through how I edit my images in 2025. Right then, so let's head into the computer and let's get into this editing. Right then, so here we are in Lightroom. I'm at the bottom of the screen here, bottom left. I have my 3 images, my landscape, my wildlife, and my street image. Starting off with the landscape. Now, the first thing I always do, I head over to the top right here, just below the histogram, and I click on the crop section. I always make sure it's auto. I always hit auto and just make sure that the image is relatively straight, well, very straight in fact. I do make sure that I do it on location, but I always like to make sure when I'm in the computer editing. Now these 2 here on the right hand side of the screen, these are 2 little distractions. So rather than, you know, go over to the remove tool, I just ever so slightly bring in the crop and remove that. Again, with the top half, I think this is a slight distraction, this little tree here. So again, I will just bring that down ever so slightly until it's removed, and then just bring the image to where I think is fine, which isn't there. So what I don't like about this is this part here. See how it just chops this part of the tree off here? So I'm gonna have to go back over to the padlock there and click on the padlock. It unlocks it. I can now drag each individual side individually without the rest of the frame being altered. So again, like I say, I don't want to touch those 2 white distractions on the right hand side. How's that? That's a little better. Right, so now that the image is straight and level, I'll be honest, what I do now is these here, they're there to be used, okay? Don't be afraid to use auto. It's there to be used. It gives you a base to work off. So I always hit the auto, and then Lightroom then decides how the image should look. That's Lightroom's version of the finished article. I then use my own style, my own editing style, to tweak what Lightroom thinks is okay. So straight away I head down to remove chromatic aberration and enable profile corrections up to Fujifilm, and it just ever so slightly tweaks that. So that's the main parts done. I've straightened it, removed chromatic aberration and enable profile corrections. So now I am ready to edit this image. So I'd literally just work my way down these sliders until I'm happy with the finished product. So what I'll do, I think it's a little bit bright. I mean, the histogram says it's bang in the center, absolutely fine. But I'm not overly keen, so I may warm it up ever so slightly. I just click on the temperature. At the moment is 4,500 kelvins, and I will just warm that up a tweak at a time to 5,250. Nice and warm, nice and soothing on the eye, I think. Exposure, not too bad, I don't think. I think I'm happy with that. Contrast, I'll always boost it ever so slightly to around about 10 to 15. So I will put 15 in there, and I'm happy with that. Highlights. Now I use the highlights and on the histogram here to show highlight clipping on the top right hand side there. I will click that, and right now the image, if I boost the highlights, you will see it starts to go red. Here, look. See how it's gone red there? That's the Lightroom software letting me know that that area is over highlighted, which isn't a lot to be fair, but I will bring that back ever so slightly just until those red marks disappear. I'm happy with that. Again, same with the shadows. I will click on the shadows on the top left of the histogram there, and again what I will do, I will over exaggerate the shadows and they go blue. Thankfully there's not a lot of shadows in this image, so again, like I say, I will just tweak those until the shadows blue area disappear. Whites, I will just leave that alone. Blacks, again, I will leave that alone. Down to the texture. I don't really do a lot with this. I will boost it increments of 5 to around about between 10 and 15 on both. Why? It doesn't really do a lot, I don't think, to the image. But I do it, it's just force of habit, I think. Dehaze, again, ever so slightly, just to punch those colours a little bit more. Vibrancy, saturation, I'm happy with those. The saturation may go up a touch, perhaps. This was I think it was the summer or early autumn image, judging by the colours on the trees there. Down to the tone curve. I don't really do a lot with the tone curve. If I was to, I put 3 points, one on the left, one in the middle, and one on the right. And if I want to adjust those, the option is there. I mean, the rule is generally an S curve. But again, with editing, it's all personal preference. So there is a slight S curve in the tone curve there. Coming down to this area. Now, if you want to specifically pick out one colour, there's not a lot of colour in this. There's yellows and there's greens primarily. But if you do want to alter a specific colour, head over to this little tool here, this pointer, click on that, and you'll see if you hover over the image, it will pick out individual colours. So there you have the green and the yellows if you want to pinpoint a specific colour. I don't, so I will leave it alone. Down to the sharpening. Now again, I don't really do a lot of sharpening on here. The only thing I will do is the detail, and I am quite aggressive with the detail area. I will boost it to 50 plus, round about the 70, 75 mark. So I'll leave that around about the 70. Luminance, now I don't really need to do a lot of this because the ISO was 200. So there won't be a lot of noise. So I will just leave that luminance alone. And then pretty much, I don't really touch anything else on the sliders. Now, when it comes to adding a mask, if I want to emphasize a specific part of the image, I will go to the mask area and I will use a radial gradient. And I will add a radial, say for instance, we'll do the boathouse here. I want to emphasize the boathouse more than any part of the image. So I'll draw a circle over the boathouse. A bit like that. And then what I'll do, I'll come over here where it says invert and I will click that. Now what that does now, as you can see, it's inverted the rest of the image. The boathouse has been selected, and as you can see, that's quite bright, and the rest of the image is all red. That's the bit that I'm going to change. And all I do there is head over to the exposure and ever so slightly bring it back, and you see there the image goes a bit darker rather than the boathouse itself. Not a lot. You don't want to overdo it. You know, if you go too far, you know, you get that. You don't want to go too far. So I just ever so slightly bring it back to what I think is nice for my style of editing. There's no right and there's no wrong with editing. That is key. That for me is very, very important. There is no right and no wrong. It's how you like to edit. Okay? And that for me is pretty much the end product. Now, if you come down here to the bottom left of the image, you've got the Y and the Y there. You could click on those and it gives you a side-by-side comparison before and after. And you can see there the dramatic change in the raw file and the edited file. That is the landscape image. Heading over to the wildlife, these are the puffins from the northeast. I was over there in June for a couple of days there for the puffins. I'm not overly keen on this one. It was hard to pick which files to use for this video. The reason I don't like this is this bottom half here, just how the grass disappears. So I may crop this a lot. I am going to crop it because of this little tail here that just encroaches into the image. So again, over to the crop tool, auto, could not straighten. That's because it's already been straightened. Now, to get rid of this distraction here, rather than use the remove tool, I'm going to go back to the padlock and unlock it. Now I am going to be very, very aggressive here with the crop. I'm going to bring it out to round about there, bring that one in to get rid of that little encroachment of the tail, bring that up a little bit more, make sure the left and the right are pretty parallel, and then drag this top half right down. That is a very, very aggressive crop. More like a letterbox crop. And for me, that is perfect. Again, the side-by-side comparison didn't work. Oh dear. So there's the crop. Nice and aggressive, but sometimes needs must. Again, very similar, or the very same to the landscape edit. Head over to the auto and let Lightroom just give you a base again. And there it is. The highlights have dropped a lot, but the shadows have gone up. So again, working on these sliders, maybe warm up ever so slightly, just small increments like that. Again, the shadows, it's just the shadows for me on this one. It's got quite dark here, so I am going to push the shadows to the maximum, right up to 100. Again, don't be afraid to be what I would call aggressive on the sliders. I mean, the histogram is all over the place, but the image looks fine. So I will raise the blacks ever so slightly, just to bring out those blacks, and I may raise the exposure ever so slightly. I can always drop the highlights again if I need to. Highlights down. Again, with the clarity and the texture, just boost those to 15. Dehaze ever so slightly. Down to enable lens profile, which I should have done at the start. Fujifilm, didn't really do a lot there, but back up to the sliders. So I mean I'm pretty happy with that. I mean, ignore the histogram. Don't be fooled by the histogram. You know, this is the image I've been left with. I may boost the highlights again, and I tell you what I will do, just because that sky looks very, very flat, I may head over to the mask and select the sky. Now Lightroom is going to detect the sky area. It's now working on it. So now that Lightroom has detected the sky, it does look like it's also detected the birds. So what I'm going to do, just to see if it has or hasn't, I'm going to head over to the temperature, just drop it down so the sky goes a little bit bluer. Drop that quite a bit. And if I want, I can head back to the mask, create a new mask, and select subject. Now hopefully this will select the birds alone. So again, that's just working on it, and we'll refine the results there and there. So now Lightroom has done a fantastic job of actually pinpointing each individual bird. So I can now head over back to the sliders, which I've all reset, and I can just head over to the exposure and lift those birds, highlights, exposure, and make sure that they pop in this image. Head over to the temperature, and I may just warm up ever so slightly. And that for me is perfect. I'm more than happy with that image. And finally, the street photography one. This was in London a few months ago. Trying to find a specific street photography image to edit was really hard. I picked this one because it's nice and clean. You've got one subject in the middle, and a little bit of colour just pop in there. Again, like every other time, head over to the crop overlay, hit auto, and that'll just straighten up ever so slightly. You just see the bottom there and the bottom left hand side. It has ever so slightly straightened that image up. Head down to the enable lens correction, Fujifilm, and there we have it. As far as the crop goes, I'm relatively happy with that. I would like a little bit more of this, but that was user error. So again, like I say, don't be afraid to use the auto here. So I'll hit auto. And there, Lightroom has basically said, this is how I think the image should be. And frankly, I agree. I'm not going to do a lot of editing actually on this image. So I may, that is a very good indication of how Lightroom sees an image. I'm happy with that edit. All I did there was hit auto, and that's it, done. Don't be afraid to use the auto. It's there as a tool, and it's there to be used. What I will do is I will go back to the masking area, and again a radial gradient, and I will just highlight the gentleman and his dog. I'll just head over to the middle of it there. Again, head over to invert, and that will highlight the rest of the image. And I may drop the exposure just so the guy and his dog pop a little bit more. Now, normally with my street photography, I do like to head over to the black and white area. I do like this because it has got a pop of colour, but at the same time, black and white works in street photography for me personally. So hit the black and white, and there. Again, simple, auto and black and white, and that's it. So it's entirely up to yourself. Don't be afraid to use that auto. I can't emphasize that enough. So that is how I edit my landscape, my wildlife, and my street photography. So if you have enjoyed this, I would really appreciate it if you would leave me a like, leave me a comment, tell me which one you prefer, which edit you prefer. They're all ever so slightly different. The landscape was quite detailed, the wildlife was a little bit less, and the street was pretty much none. They got a little bit easier as I went on there. So let me know which one you prefer more and why. And with that being said, I have a very, very lovely Christmas with your friends and family. Be safe at New Year if you are heading out. And look forward to 2026, where I have a lot planned. So, once again, for the last time in 2025, thank you ever so much for watching. Get out there, enjoy your photography, but most of all, stay safe. And I will see you in 2026. Bye for now.